What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. Thank you for listening today. On today's episode, we are going to look at three position groups in the draft. We're going to look at running back, tight end, and safety. These three positions are probably the deepest on the roster. These are positions that I don't think they're going to address early, but spoiler alert, there are a couple players who I think could be a breaker of that particular prediction. But before we dive into that, we do have another top 30 visit to go over. The Packers brought in South Carolina defensive tackle TJ Sanders for a top 30 visit. And this one's interesting, exciting. He's one of my favorite defensive linemen in the whole draft. He had a really high RAS. I believe it was over 9. I don't need to check right this second. You guys can check it out. He's pretty young. He's definitely more of a second-round pick. However, I do think that he's moving up the consensus board a little bit. PFF has him at 35 on their board now. So I do think that this is a potential second-round pick if he's there. I was telling somebody the other day, though, I would not be shocked if they take somebody we're not thinking about in round one at one of the positions that we are thinking about. You know, I've been saying a long time, if I were to bet money on it now, I thought it was Derek Harmon for a while. I'm not convinced that it's not going to be Landon Jackson. We shall see. We are only a few weeks away from the draft, which is extremely exciting. So TJ Sanders is coming in for a visit. Very interesting. They had Matthew Golden in earlier this week. They'll continue to bring in guys. Next time we do a podcast, we will talk about the next few people that they bring in. Now, let's talk about this position group. We're going to talk about, again, tight end, safety, running back. I'd be pretty shocked if Goody went this route in the first 3 rounds. Probably before round 5, actually. But this is probably the weirdest, strangest, most unpredictable draft that I can remember. I would argue this is probably the strangest draft that I remember watching. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. One thing that's interesting about this draft, guys, and a lot of people have said this, there are like 3 blue chip players in this whole draft. Maybe 2. Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are the 2 that are, no doubt potential stars. I'm really, really high on Cam Ward. I think he's going to be a star as well. So that would be 3. If you ask draft experts, though, nobody else is without potential problems and potential uncertainty. Now, again, every draft pick has a level of uncertainty to them anyway. But again, the unpredictability of this draft makes me think that, somebody who's 45th in the consensus board could go at 23. Somebody who is top 15 of the consensus board could go at 53. Right? With that said, these position groups, running back, tight end, safety, are probably not going to be something that they address early. However, there are 2 names to watch in the first round range that I think could be potentially thought of in that first range. We're going to do a little bit of scouting today. We're going to kind of just breeze through, each position group, kind of what the outlook is for this season and beyond. And again, if there's any scouting we'll do, it'll be on those 2 players, those sneaky sleeper picks in the round 1. So let's start with running back. So we got Josh Jacobs signed for 3 more seasons. He's probably going to play 2 more. Spoiler alert, I think there's a possibility he might only play 1 more. So we'll talk about that in a second. Behind Josh Jacobs, though, they got Marshawn Lloyd. They drafted him in round 3 last year. I am very, very high on him. I mentioned this in the second episode of Titletown Talk that I'm very high on him. I think in 2 years, Marshawn Lloyd could be running back 1 on the Packers. I think he's going to have a massive breakout this season. I think we're going to see him on later, like second and third downs. He's going to be an explosive guy out of the backfield in the pass game. I think he's going to be really, really important this year. That being said, we do have Emmanuel Wilson at RB2. A lot of people who I respect, I talk about Andy Herman a lot on here. There are other people too in the Packers sphere that I have a ton of respect for that think Emmanuel Wilson could be an RB1 as well in this league. So if they decided to go with Lloyd and Wilson after this season, even if Josh Jacobs got hurt this year, I actually don't think that would change their win number at all. That's how high I am on those guys. They still have Chris Brooks as well. I believe they have another guy in their practice squad whose name is escaping me. But I want to just caveat this. This is a very, very strong running back class. Todd McShay thinks this is the best running back class in 25 years. Okay, so if that's the case, the Packers have been known to, pick from the more, bountiful, we'll say, position groups in the draft. A couple years ago, they obviously took Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave in a very strong tight end draft. Last year, there were a ton of linemen. They took, Jordan Morgan in the first round. They tend to go with the deep position every time there is one. This time around, though, running back is definitely not a need. But I'm going to throw a wrench in things here. We're going to talk about a player right at the end of the running back breakdown who I think they could pick in round 1. I bet they have a first-round grade on this person. I'm very high on this person. Let's look at the running back position from a skeptical view, a naysayer's view, a glass half empty view, if you will. They can get out of Josh Jacobs' deal after this season. It's only really ever been a 2-year deal. The other 2 years on the 4-year deal are team options, basically. All the dead money's gone. So I think it's fair to ask the question, right? What if, Josh Jacobs finally starts to feel his age? I think he's going to be 28 next year, if not 29. I don't think he plays 4 years on this deal at all, personally. But what if this season we start to see a little bit of decline from him? What if he gets hurt? Maybe he hurts his knee this season. Right? I'm not wishing for that whatsoever. I don't think we can just say, okay, Josh Jacobs is out after this year. We're just going to plug in Marshawn Lloyd. Right? Do I think he could be an RB1? Yes. Do I think Emmanuel Wilson can be an RB1? Yes. But I don't think that if there's a running back in the first round who's very, very good, who's high on their board, that they would say no to it just because of Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson. Okay? Remember what they did a few years ago when they had Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. They were already on the team. They were both free agents at the end of that season, right? They picked A.J. Dillon in the second round. That's a premium pick, right? I liked the A.J. Dillon pick once I figured out a little bit more about him, and obviously I fell in love with him when he started to run the ball, of course. But that being said, they have done this in the past. They draft a couple years ahead of time. So it's certainly possible that they could see the running back room differently than we do, okay? So let's just think about that for a second. Let's look at safety, right, really quick. Safety is the position I think they have the most depth at for the longest, okay? They have 3 years left of Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney. They also have Kitano Ladapo, and they have Zane Anderson. So let's look at the safety position from a skeptical view for a second, and we'll look at the positive view. They have, again, Javon Bullard is probably their slot cornerback. Okay, we pretty much know that, right? They have McKinney, Evan Williams, Oladapo, and Zane Anderson. I think this, so they're basically 4 deep, even not including Javon Bullard. So obviously this isn't going to be a position that they target early, but there's one player in the first round that we'll talk about, again, I'm spoiling a little bit, who I think could make sense there, and this is a player that I guarantee you has a first-round grade from Goody, okay? So if we look at the safety from a positive standpoint, they have 2 really good starters in Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney, and they have 2 really good backups in Kitano Ladapo and Zane Anderson. I really like Kitano Ladapo. He was one of my favorite guys in the draft last year. I actually predicted they would draft him, not to shine my own shoes too much, but I had a really good feeling they would draft him. They had him in for a visit, ironically. He had a really high RAS, and he had that sort of 5th to 8th or 7th round grade on him, 8th. So again, we'll see. If we look at the safety group from a half empty standpoint, so a pessimistic view, what if Evan Williams is as good as he's going to be, right? Do I think that's the case? No. I think actually Evan Williams has a chance of being a Pro Bowl safety, especially the way he played in the middle of the season last year. I think Evan Williams has a super high ceiling. But we know, again, Javon Bullard is a nickel, at least as of now. I don't think that they would look at a first-round graded safety in the first round and say, oh, no, we're 100% sure Evan Williams is going to be good forever. They have to be able to say that for them to say no to a safety in round 1. And again, this is only if all the other positions are gone. They're not going to reach for anybody. They don't do that, okay? So I would not be surprised if they looked at potentially a safety in the first round. We'll talk about the player later. The last position is tight end. They have Tucker Kraft, then Luke Musgrave for 2 more seasons after this. Actually, technically, 2 more. You guys know, I think Tucker Kraft is going to be an all-pro tight end. I think actually at the end of this season, we're going to see him as a top 5 tight end of the whole league, okay? And if you guys are not, you don't believe that, remember this podcast. I don't remember what episode we're on, but remember this podcast. Tucker Kraft is going to be a top 5 tight end. Luke Musgrave, started out super hot in 23. He was their starting tight end until he got hurt. And then, Tucker Kraft stepped in. I think it was the Chargers game in 23, and he just took off. So Luke Musgrave, again, being positive, he was a second-round pick in 23. He has a very, very high ceiling. Athletically, he is a freak show. 9.8 RAS when he came out. Freak show. That being said, we still haven't really seen freak show from Luke Musgrave. So this is the position of the three today that I think is least likely that they would take before round 4 or 5. I also don't think that there's going to be a tight end at 23 that makes any sense for them. The few guys that are the first round tight ends in this draft, they're going to go before the Packers pick. So that being said, they don't just have Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. They also have Ben Sims, who I thought was really promising in 2023 as well. I think he took a big step back in 24. But let's remember, he was a really high RAS guy as well in the draft in 23. Super athletic guy. He ran a 4.5 40, which is insane at 6'5", 250 something. He's a pretty good blocker, shows some promise at least. So he's a big upside play as well. The discouraging thing, again, glass half empty with Ben Sims, is he was benched at the end of the season for John Fitzpatrick. And that was mostly due to blocking. So this is where I think at tight end they need help, is they need a guy like Mercedes Lewis was back when he was here. Somebody who can block, right? So we'll kind of take a look at a potential blocking tight end. There were a couple in this draft that I really like that we'll talk about. Let's start with running back, though, for deep dive, okay? So they have a pretty consistent draft type with running back. Aaron Jones was a 9.2 RAS. A.J. Dillon was 9.15. Marshawn Lloyd was 8.62. And let's be clear, Marshawn Lloyd would have been a lot higher if he wasn't 5'9", okay? Or I think he's actually 5'8". Dexter Williams from a few years back, he was 8.13. Devontae Mays was the same year as Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And Devontae Mays was 7.6 RAS, and Kylan Hill was 7.2. Jamal Williams was probably the only guy that they picked that was a little bit more unathletic, but he was a really productive guy in college. I was never a big Jamal Williams fan outside of his personality. My wife, Coralie, was obsessed with him, like his personality. So let's go through a few guys that match this. We're not going to look at high-end guys. We're only going to look at one guy who I think could be a potential sleeper at 23. Let's start with DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. He's actually probably my favorite guy that is in that range for the Packers. He's probably a fourth rounder. So he's 98th on the consensus board. He has a 9.74 RAS. He's probably going to go too early, but he is a ton of fun. So DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. Would I be mad if they saw him at BPA? Let's be clear. BPA, best player available. If he was BPA in round 3, I would not be mad at all if they took him. But again, I think for today's exercise, we're going to look at the more realistic guys in the detail and one maybe unrealistic sleeper. So the first guy is Donovan Edwards out of Michigan. He was, I believe, Michigan's second string running back this year. He is 224 on the consensus board, but he's a freak show athlete, right? He is a 9.78 RAS. He's 5'11", 205, so he's got a really good size and speed. He ran a 4.44 40, 38-inch vertical, 38.5. He's got some receiving upside. He's a really strong finisher. He's got some good burst. He just hasn't really shown a lot of lateral ability. Again, he was never the lead guy in Michigan, and they didn't really give him that many carries, right? That's kind of what makes him more of a 7th-round guy. But again, you draft for the future, not what they did, okay? So his vision is a little bit bad. I wouldn't say it shows up a little bit on some of his tape. I didn't look at a ton of tape of his, but the tape I did, you could see it. His acceleration shows up in his testing, but it's not very good in his actual, his scores. He had a 41 elusiveness score, which is not very good, and he only averaged 2.8 yards after contact. That's also pretty bad. Donovan Edwards is a 7th-round guy. But if they picked him in even the 6th, 7th round, I'd be pretty happy about it. So he's the first guy for today's exercise. Montrell Johnson out of Florida is the next guy. He has a 9.61 RAS. He's 5'11", 212, so size is perfect. 242 on the consensus, so he's around the 7th round. He ran a 4.41 40, which is really good for someone who's 212. That's going to play for sure. He had a 76 grade from PFF, 86 elusiveness rating, though, which is really, really good. Again, earlier we talked about Donovan Edwards just now, 41 elusiveness grade. Montrell Johnson all the way to an 86. So comparatively, 3.4 yards after contact. Zone rush grade was 75. Zone rush is basically what the Packers run. So I think that Montrell Johnson out of Florida makes a ton of sense for them. He runs with lead in his pads. This is what NFL.com said about him. He's a good pass protector, which the Packers value, everybody values. He's a, quote, fall forward finisher. Say that 10 times fast, which is obviously good for short yardage. A little bit bad with recognition, a little bit slow, and injuries have been a big problem for his. But I think, again, injuries are the reason he's not going higher than probably the 7th round. So I like Montrell Johnson. If you guys put on the highlight tape of his, I didn't look at actual all 22 of his. It was actually hard for me to find it for some reason. But I really liked him a lot. Again, 7th round type of guy. Next guy, Damian Martinez out of Miami, 9.4 RAS. He's 5'11", 217. So big boy. He is 138 on the consensus board. His 40 time was a little bit slow, but again, 217, 4.5 40, 91 grade from PFF this last season. So this guy is a lot of fun. I believe, let's see. So his RAS is high, but I think that I'm trying to think of a comparison for him. He reminds me a little bit of, ironically, the guy I just talked about earlier, Dexter Williams, coming out of Notre Dame. Why am I blinking on his name? I'm sorry, guys. There are a ton of guys that he reminds me of on tape. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Clinton Portis as well. He will never be as good as Clinton Portis, but he's a fun running back. Again, he's 130 on the consensus board, so we're going to have to think probably 4th, 5th round for him. Might be a little bit early, but I'm a big fan of his. Next guy, Bashul Tutin out of Virginia Tech. Tutin, I'm not even sure how to say his last name. Tutn. He's 5'9", 206. He has a 9.34 RAS. He's a 5th, 6th round guy. This dude can fly. On tape, the dude has home run talent. He can run out of the gym. Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech is another guy I like. He's 5'9", 214. His RAS is 8.35. He's 209 on consensus. I actually like Taj Brooks a lot. There are a couple guys, the old PFF guys, Sam Munson and Steve Palazzolo. Sorry, they're on the 33rd team now. Both of them really liked Taj Brooks a lot more than the consensus does. So I think there's something sneaky there about him that could be really good. RJ Harvey out of Central Florida. He's 5'8", 205. So he's a little bit on the smaller side. But again, 7th round. 8.43 RAS. Raheem Sanders out of South Carolina, I like him as well. He's a big guy. He's 6 foot 217, only a 719 RAS, but his 40 was 446, which at 217, 6 foot is really, really good. His issue is the lateral ability. His agility scores were pretty concerning, but a Sanders at running back, throw a 22 on him, I'm going to be stoked. A lot of people have asked me, I think 2 people have asked me on Facebook about Cam Scatterbo. I don't like Cam Scatterbo. I think he's probably going to be good, but he reminds me, he's a little too slow for me. He runs a lot faster than he looks like on tape, but I like his tape. I don't love it. There are a lot of people who are really mixed on him. He's like 53 on the consensus board. There are some people who have him as like a 7th round pick because of his testing. So I'm really interested to see how and where Cam Scatterbo goes. But to the people who messaged me about it, I think I DM'd you back. If I didn't, I'm sorry. I will. He will not be a Packer. I can promise you that. So let's talk about the round 1 sleeper. I do think Omarion Hampton out of South Carolina has a potential. He could potentially be there. He's getting a lot of buzz right now, though. He is, in some people's minds, better than Ashton Genty, which I think is absurd, by the way. Ashton Genty is one of my favorite players I've ever watched, and I think he's going to be an absolute superstar. Omarion Hampton is more like a Jahmyr Gibbs type to me. He's a guy that you take in the 1st round, he's good, but he's not Bijan Robinson, okay? That being said, Bijan has been a little bit worse than Jahmyr Gibbs, so we'll see about that. If Omarion Hampton is at 23, I think the Packers take a really hard look at him. That being said, I think he's going to be gone in the teens, but he has a really high RAS as well. The guy that I've been building up for is Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Judkins is a freak show, guys. He's 51 in the consensus poll right now, but he has a 9.88 RAS. He ran a 4.48. I guess some teams clocked him at 4.41. He is 5'11", 221. So this dude is monster. He's a monster. So for perspective, A.J. Dillon was 240. He ran a 4.53. A.J. Dillon was a freak. But Judkins is almost as big as him and a lot faster. On the PFF board, he's 53, 51 in the consensus board. I can guarantee you guys the Packers have a first-round grade on him. He had some phenomenal tape from Ohio State this year. I think that there's a really good chance that, especially if all the other guys are gone, that Quinshon Judkins could be the pick at 23. I want you to just remember that. Remember this podcast. I could be totally wrong. Just remember this. PFF grades, he had an 88 overall grade in 24. He had a 90 rushing grade overall, 85 zone grade, 84 gap grade. Again, freak show. His pros from PFF, quick explosive footwork, willing and fundamentally sound pass blocker. Again, that's going to play. Teams are going to love that. Impressive yards after contact. I don't have the stat in front of me. His yards after contact are insane. He's got long speed that shows up on tape. He plays with really good competitiveness and toughness. Only 2 fumbles and 717 carries. That is crazy. Really, really, really good. His cons, he is not much of a passing game threat. That's the only concern with him, right? He hasn't really shown that. But a lot of players don't show it. They just have to show it once they get drafted. The other cons in him says lacked creativity. I don't know where that came from PFF. I thought creativity is kind of weird as a measuring stick for running backs. Hit the gap and sprint. I don't know what other creativity we're looking for here. His weight can get too far over his toes, and that can cause him to lose balance. I would agree with that. So overall, guys, Quinshon Judkins is a second-round pick according to consensus. He is 100% a first-round player for the Packers. I would bet my house on it. That being said, if there are other players at more need positions available at 23, they're not going to pick Judkins because they have a strong running back room. But I would not be pissed whatsoever if we went into this season with Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, and Quinshon Judkins. I would not be upset about that at all. You go into next season with Lloyd and Judkins, and you have your running backs for the next 4 years. That would be exciting. Okay, let's move on to the safety class. This is a pretty weak class after round 1. There are I think, 3 first-round safeties. There's Malachi Starks from Georgia. There is Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. And then we're going to go over the third guy who very well could be the Packers' pick at 23. I doubt it, but there's a small chance. So everybody that I go over today, sorry guys, excuse me. Everybody that I talk about here in the next 5 minutes, we'll say, none of these guys are going to be better than Oladapo or Anderson. So I didn't do like a deep scouting report on these guys. I only did one on the mystery player. Maybe some of you know who that is already. Excuse me, you draft nuts know who I'm talking about. But none of these guys I'm about to read off are going to be more than a special teamer this season. Zane Anderson is probably not going to re-sign after next year. He actually becomes a restricted free agent. They have to tender him. So I think whoever they draft at safety is going to back up the guys we've already talked about. So we're going to go in order of athletic profile until the final guy, who's the most athletic safety ever. Yes, ever. First guy is Marcus Siegel from Kansas State. He is a little on the shorter side. He's 5'11", 199. He had a 9.63 RAS, though. So that'll play. He's 298 in the consensus board, 285 in the PFF board. So I would be surprised if he is picked before the 7th round. He was a team captain last year for Kansas State, which apparently they really like the Packers. They really like guys who were captains. I think they drafted 4 guys who were captains last year. He's probably too small to play safety long-term, but again, maybe he can back up Javon Bullard at nickel. I shouldn't say he's too small. 5'11", 199 is totally fine. Darnell Savage was shorter, ironically, and smaller. So I liked Marcus Siegel out of Kansas State. He's an interesting player, super athlete. Jalen Reed from Penn State's the next guy. Not Jaden Reed, Jalen Reed from Penn State. He is 5'11", 210, so he's bigger, even though he's the same height as Marcus Siegel. He's 5'11", 210, 904 RAS. He has some serious punch when he hits people. I really liked his tape. 152 on the consensus board, so he's probably a 4th or 5th rounder, probably a little bit early for the Packers to pick a safety, again, unless he's BPA, which we'll see. But I like Jalen Reed's tape from Penn State. Craig Woodson from California is our next guy. He's 6 foot 200. Again, 200 pounds at 6 foot will play, no question. I don't think he's related to Charles Woodson, but I would love to see another Woodson in the Packers uniform. Seeing him in, like, let's say number 36 at safety with Woodson on the back, that'd be exciting. He is 226 on the consensus board, 232 on the PFF board. So he has more like a special teams prowess. But I actually liked his highlight. I didn't watch his full tape. I watched his highlights. There's definitely something there with him. Again, this is about when they would draft him. This is going to be somebody who can make a big impact on special teams right away. Craig Woodson, California, like him. Next guy I really liked, R.J. Mickens from Clemson. He's 6 foot, 199, 895 RAS, 199 on the consensus board. PFF has him a little higher. I don't remember. I think he's 170 there. So this is a 6th, 7th round pick probably. He's probably my favorite of the guys we've talked about so far. There's a couple guys I like more. His explosion scores are off the charts. Something that the Packers like, no matter what position, is broad jump and vertical jump. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but his explosion score was like in the 97th percentile. And it shows up when he hits people. He's a big hitter, good tackler. The scouting report said he lacks recovery speed. You know, his 40, I think, was 4.48, so nothing crazy there. But again, this isn't somebody who we're expecting to jump in and start. Out of all the guys we've talked about so far, I think he has the highest potential to start. He's got some good instincts there. Again, he's going to be a guy who will probably be a special teamer, but I liked R.J. Mickens a lot. Dean Clark out of Fresno State is the next guy, 6 foot 208, 925 RAS. So this dude's athletic as hell, and you can see it a little bit on the tape. He's 261 in the consensus board, so he's a 7th round guy probably. With an RAS like that, and with some of the stuff you could see on tape, how jumpy he is and explosive he is when he hits people, I think he has a chance to go higher than consensus. I could see him be... Sorry, that might have cut off there, guys. Dean Clark, I think he could be a 5th, 6th round pick, potentially. There's no question, though, that, again, when you're an athletic player at a premium position, you can argue whether or not safety's premium or not. I would say that he has a chance of going a little bit higher. I liked his tape a lot. 2 guys left. These are my 2 favorite safeties in the draft. One of them is a sleeper at 23. The other guy, some of you might know, and that is Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin, our Badgers. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm also a Badger fan. I think Hunter Wohler can be a starter in this league. I promise you it's not because he's a Badger, but I think he can be a starter down the road. He is really, really smart. He's a Senior Bowl guy, which, you know, they love the Senior Bowl. He's the best size so far of everybody, 6'2", 213. His RAS was 921, so really, really strong athlete. He's 225 on the consensus board. His agility scores were really, really good. His 40 was only 4.5, though. So his, side-to-side speed is good. He does have some good acceleration. His 10 split was really good. He's one of those guys who graded out better in 23 than 24. He had an 88 grade in 23 from PFF, 78 in 24. His 25% missed completion rate is really, really good. So he forced a lot of incompletions. His run defense grade was 75, so above average there. He is a full-on special teams star in the making. I think he's going to be an instant special teams impact player. If the Packers picked him, I'd be really, really happy about that. He'll be a good backup right away, but I do think that he has future starter potential. I don't know for sure if it'll be for the Packers, but I can tell you for a fact he has potential to start. I really like Hunter Wohler. Next guy, I've been building him up here for a while. I've been teasing him. Nick Emanwari, from South Carolina. This dude absolutely broke the combine, guys. He scored a perfect 10 out of 10 RAS. Out of 1,079 safeties from 1987 to today, he was number 1. So he's the most athletic safety of all time at the combine. Let me repeat that. He scored a 10 out of 10 RAS, perfect 10 RAS. He is the number one safety of all time ever measured at the combine. That's 1,079 safeties since 1987. So this guy is a freak show. He's 6'3", 220, which is crazy. He ran a 4'4", 240. He had a 43-inch vertical, guys. Mine was 26 in high school. Maybe some of you who went to high school would be, no, I can't jump. I could never dunk. Couldn't even touch the rim. Sadly, I can now when it doesn't matter. I'm old. His vert is in the 99th percentile. He had an 11.6 broad jump, which is also in the 99th percentile. He's currently 23 on the consensus board. So that, again, ironically, right where the Packers pick. His PFF grade from last year, 80 overall, 87 coverage grade, 79 run defense grade. So, again, not a great run defender, but, certainly good enough. His comp was Obi Melifonwu, and some of you might remember this. He was another guy who, very similar, super tall, super athletic safety. I don't remember who he got drafted by. He ended up not being very good, and that might be in the Packers' minds. I guarantee you Obi Melifonwu was really, really high on their board. He came into the league, and he was not good, so maybe same thing happens with Imanwari, but I doubt it. He only had a 7% missed tackle percentage, which is really, really good. He had a 10% forced incompletion rate. He had 4 picks this year, which is really, really good. He also didn't allow a touchdown for what it's worth. His pros on tape from PFF, size and length are elite. Freakish athletic testing, we know that. He can play in the box, slot, near the line of scrimmage. He can play all over. Again, he's versatile, guys, versatile. That's the irony here. He can come in. I think he could beat out Evan Williams immediately at the strong safety spot. I also think he could beat out Javon Bullard in the slot. That being said, again, this is I would call it a mismanagement of resources because they have so many safeties and they have a couple slot guys. They also have Nate Hobbs who can play the slot. But I guarantee you guys, the reason I'm even spending this much time on Imanwari is because he is the most athletic safety ever. Goody loves tall guys with arm length. His arms are 34 inches, which is insane, guys. And he loves freak athletes. That is what Imanwari is over and over. And he's a good guy. He plays well on tape, too. A couple other things with scouting. Makes good use of range paired with ball skills. He does have ball skills. 4 picks. Flashes make up speed, undercut crossing routes, and fights through screen blocks. His cons are a little long, though. Nothing that you can't coach up, though. Stiff hips make him harder on himself. Short air quickness is a problem. And this is what's interesting, guys. For them to say that in the scouting report, it does not show up in the combine. So whenever we see this is a guy who tests well. He's a freak athlete, but it doesn't show up on tape. So what does that mean? That means that he needs to play more. He needs more experience. Excuse me. So that being said, he gets a little bit handsy when he's late to stuff. He's not great against the deep ball. He overruns pursuit angles, can miss tackles from time to time. But again, this is all stuff that can be coached. I think that Imanwari is going to be a really good safety in this league. I'm going to put my name on it right now. If it was for the Packers, I would not be mad. You can never have too much depth in the secondary. I think Imanwari could come in and compete at either position. I think he could eventually be a starter next to McKinney, if not right away. Would it be my first preferred pick? Absolutely not. You guys know I am not looking for safeties here in the first round, but again, we'll talk about it at the end. If other players are gone and he's the best on their board, they will take him. I guarantee it. Last position for the day, tight end. So again, out of the 3 we've talked about today, I'm pretty confident they will not take one in round 1, 2, probably not 3 either. Round 4 is where I see it. The other thing that's interesting about this, guys, I gave you Junkins and Imanwari at running back and safety. They are 2 guys who realistically could be there that make sense at 23. I do not see a tight end that will be there that makes sense. The 2 tight ends, Tyler Warren, and then the other guy from Notre Dame that's escaping me at the moment. Doesn't matter. It's Michigan, not Notre Dame. I'm sorry, guys. So there's not going to be a safety or a tight end there that makes any sense in round 1. But I do think that this is one thing that a niche player that could play a lot out of all these positions. Out of the 3 positions we're talking about today, if they pick the right tight end, I believe that this person could play a lot more than the other 2, okay? First guy, C.J. Dupree from Alabama. I like this guy a lot. He's 6'4", 256, 949 RAS. He's 232 on the consensus, 219 on PFF. He's a Senior Bowl guy, so that's good. His blocking grade was 70, which is above average per PFF. Again, where he's at, 232 in the consensus, that's a 6th, 7th round pick. But again, I guarantee you guys, this guy would come in. He could help with blocking. He could play a little bit of that Mercedes Lewis role. He is a blocking tight end with receiving chops, not the other way around. Next guy, Thomas Fedone, the second from Nebraska. He's a little bit bigger than Dupree. He's 6'5", 245, 944 RAS. Also a Senior Bowl guy. Yes, Senior Bowl. He is 243 on the consensus. He's a lot higher on PFF's board. He's 171 on PFF. So they like him a little bit more than the consensus. He only had one drop in 47 targets. That's really good. He is a bit more of a receiving threat than a blocking guy right now. So he has some upside as a run blocker. I think his run blocking rate was 56, so not very good. But he shows willingness to block, which is the first step. That being said, he has a very similar body type to Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, really, and a little bit skinny. So I think he's more of a high receiving upside guy. You're not going to draft him to play this year in the blocking game. Next guy, Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech. He is 6'3", 260, so he's a little bit heavier than the other guys we talked about, but a little bit shorter. He is more of an H-back, so he's more of a, think Josiah DeGuara type. He's 923 RAS at 6'3", 260, so pretty good. 170 on the consensus, so that's right in the range they would pick. Out of the guys we've talked about so far, he's probably the best fit because, again, he can block. He had an 80 run blocking grade last year per PFF. That's really, really good. So remember, 60 is average. He was an 80. He had a 60% contested catch rate, so he can catch in contested catch situations, which is good. So you can see him being somebody that kind of squirts out in the red zone, sort of like they've done with other players, kind of that little sneak screen. So, again, 170 on the consensus board. He's really athletic. He can block. There's a good chance he goes a little bit earlier than the Packers would be willing to take him. But I really like Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech a lot. Next guy, Luke Lachey from Iowa. He's 6'5", 251, 873 RAS. He's 222 on the PFF board, 215 on consensus. He's really big. He's actually 6'6". I mean, the combine, if you round up, he's 6'6". Other places have him at 6'7". He's very, very raw. He did not show any run blocking or receiving ability this year, at least nothing dramatic, right? But he's really, really hard worker by all accounts. He's got some tenacity in the blocking game. He's got some speed on him. Again, I think he ran a 4.7, so at 251, that's solid. So I think you could see a world where he develops into a good tight end, but again, he's not somebody who I'm pounding the table for. The final guy on the tight end group is Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech. He's 6'4", 253. He has a 7.83 RAS, so a little bit lower on RAS. He's a Senior Bowl guy. 151 in consensus, so he's going to be a 4th, 5th round pick probably. Blocking is his specialty, though. By all accounts, he is a high upside blocking tight end. So from the NFL.com write-up as well as PFF, they say that his upside is as a tight end 3 who can block at a very high level. He's got a great record as a pass protector. He's called a very high IQ blocker by both places. So again, for PFF and NFL.com to both say it, that's really, really good sign. He spent a lot of time blocking in a wing T offense. Goes back to high school. He can definitely play that H-back role, similar to what Josiah DeGuara did. So this is out of all the tight ends that we could see the Packers pick. He's the one that could jump in on day one and make the biggest impact because they can put him in that blocking role. He could beat out Ben Sims as tight end 3, I think. And they've already gotten their hands on him at the Senior Bowl. So he's kind of a picturesque, perfect Packers fit, I would say. His explosion scores were in the 80th percentile, 85th percentile. He ran a 4.82, so nothing crazy there. Not going to wow you there. He's not going to be a great receiver at this point. But Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech is my favorite of the tight ends, and I think the Packers will like him a lot. And this is a role that is not currently filled in the Packers, a blocking tight end. A couple other freak show tight ends. This guy, Carter Runyon from Towson. I've never even heard of this place. Maybe some of you have. He's 6'4", 245, ran a 4.63. Great explosion skills, too. I don't even think he's on the consensus board. I couldn't find him if he's way down there if he is. Another guy that's worth mentioning, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. He is a second, third round guy, but I really like him a lot. I don't think the Packers will pick him, but he is 6'5", 247, 4'6", 40. So he's got a very similar skill set to Luke Musgrave, but he's got better explosion skills, more production, less injury concern. So this is somebody that if you want to get some Luke Musgrave insurance early, if he's the best player available in round 3, I think you take him. Last guy, Gavin Bartholomew out of Pittsburgh. He was a Senior Bowl guy, 8.87 RAS, 6'5", 247, 4'7", 40. He's 302 on the consensus board, so I think he's going to be drafted with his athletic profile. 8.87 RAS is really, really good. I think the Packers will have some interest there. But, again, these are all the tight ends I think that makes sense for them. This is all names that are in that 5th round and later range. That being said, I told you Terrence Ferguson. There are a few other guys that are in that 2nd, 3rd round range. If all their guys are gone, don't be surprised they pick one. So, to summarize all this, I know this has been a little bit long. I appreciate you guys listening. They've gone best player available many, many times, especially under Ted Thompson. They've also done it under Goody. Gutekunst does, and this is the way to draft in my opinion. You pick a need position and you combine it with the best player available. So if your best player available is a quarterback and really close to that is a defensive tackle, right? You're going to take the defensive tackle because you need one. Ted Thompson was more in the mind of, hey, whoever the best player available is, we're going to take him regardless. We'll figure it out later. I think it's smarter to have some nuance there. But again, this is a weird draft. There are not a lot of, I would call, blue chip guys. Every team is going to have their own list of blue chip guys. Okay? So what I've kind of heard from people is that there are probably 20 guys on every team that have round 1 grades. That's going to look different for everybody. So the reason I'm bringing up Junkins and Emanwari, 2 positions they don't need, is if the defensive tackles, ends, cornerbacks, wide receivers, even linemen, positions that we think they need, there's a really good chance that nobody is still there in round 1 at those positions that they think is a round 1 player. I can guarantee you that they have first round grades on Emanwari and Junkins, which is why I brought them up and why we're talking about them. I think they also like, there's probably some offensive linemen they like. Calvin Banks Jr., we didn't talk about in the lineman episode. He has some tackle guard versatility. There's a good chance that he is high on their board too. There's also Josh Connerly from Oregon. He's a tackle that could go in the 2nd round. Maybe the Packers have a first round grade on him, right? The only position that would shock me in the 1st round is quarterback and probably tight end, honestly. But we need to be prepared for any position to be taken. Again, they like to go BPA. They did it with Jordan Love in 2020. I know a lot of people hated that pick when it happened. I hated it for about 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, you know what? I kind of get it, actually. They were never going to pick T. Higgins. He's not their type. Michael Pittman Jr. was my favorite receiver in that range. If they picked him at 26 or whatever, I would have been fine with it. I really liked Denzel Mims. That's a funny one. He ended up flaming out of the league quickly, but I liked him. Again, they have been known to pick players at positions they did not need. If that happened this year, we all need to be prepared for it. Emanwari, I made my case. He could be a really, really good fit there. I think he could beat out Evan Williams. I think he has a much higher ceiling than Evan Williams or Javon Bullard, frankly. And I think Quinshon Judkins could be a all-star, all-pro type of running back in this league. Both of those guys are freak athletes, and the Packers will have round 1 grades on both of those players. So be prepared to make sure if that happens that you're ready and you remember that you heard it on Titletown Talk from your boy Ian. So the last question somebody might ask is, okay, well, what if all the round 1 guys are gone? Why not just trade back? Well, I'll just be candid with you guys. If I could pick any outcome for this draft, I would trade back. I would get into I think the strength of the draft is between 30 and 60. Okay? So the reason that that's not easy is because other teams know that too. And there are other teams in that same range that the Packers are in who are going to want to trade back. So why would you trade with the Packers when you could trade with the Vikings, right? The Vikings are definitely going to want to trade back because they traded. I don't even think they have a 2nd and 3rd round pick. And they have 1 pick after the Packers. So again, it takes two to tango, they always say. And it's a very true point with this. So if the Packers want to move back, I would be overjoyed, but another team has to want it too. So if the decision becomes Eamon or Junkins, or pick a guy that has a round 2 grade, they're going to take Eamon or Junkins. And again, these are two players I think they have high. Maybe they have another guy that we're not talking about. Maybe they have a first-round grade on Landon Jackson, which I think they do, by the way. Maybe they have a first-round grade on Josh Connerly, the tackle. We don't know. That's why this is going to be so fun. So I appreciate you guys listening. Give it a like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, whatever. I really appreciate all of you guys. We officially hit our 200th download this week, so I'm super stoked about that. I will add one thing. This next week, I'm going to revisit the wide receiver group with Packer Report's draft guide. So we're going to compare Jake Morley, who I'm a big fan of. If you guys haven't looked up Jacob Morley, you should. He's correctly predicted the Packers receivers that they've drafted the last 3 times. He literally has a list of guys, and they've picked from that list every time. So he basically predicted Dontavian Wicks, Grant DuBose, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, all of it. So we are going to, the draft guide comes out, I believe, in 2 days. We're going to go through it and compare Jake Morley's list to my list from a few weeks ago. And we're going to see what the wide receiver group looks like. Hint, hint, there are a lot of guys that the Packers will like. So I guarantee you they're going to pick at least one receiver. We'll go through that. We'll do a mock draft together. We're going to do some best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, surprise picks, least surprise picks, all that. Can't wait to do it all with you guys. Thank you for listening. Have a great night, and go Pack Go.